Welcome back to another episode of Chocobo Dash. I'm your host, Elliot Lefebvre, and with me is my ever-lovely co-host,
Now, Celestine.
We've got a great show for you this week. Plenty of stuff happening in Final Fantasy XIV to talk about with all of you. First of all, just as a bit of a fandom note, if you were one of the people who had been hoping to get in on the FanFest tickets for the second batch, you are pretty much out of luck. They went up on sale on the 15th and were sold out within about 4 minutes.
Yeah, looks like there was a couple of tickets that popped up again later on in the day, but those I think were from incomplete orders and they sold out again very, very quickly. So if you were hoping to get a ticket later on, unless you were camping it or had somebody camping for you, I'm sorry, you're kind of out of luck. The only other option right now, I guess, is eBay or going to the convention and hoping for a scalper who will more than likely try to rip you off.
I would not recommend either of those options because, as Nell just said, it's more than likely that people will try to rip you off. Now, I actually was camping for someone on both of the ticket occasions, and while I can totally understand why people would be upset at how quickly they sold out, I will say, in Square's defense, I don't know if there was really a better way to do this, except for the fact that they were being sold at such an odd time during the day when a lot of people are still at work, that it really that's the one part of this that really kind of struck me as could have been handled better.
Yeah, if they were going to have it at the same time as they had it, like at 1:30 p.m. Eastern / 10:30 a.m. Pacific, if they were going to go with that, they should have had it probably on a Saturday or a Sunday, like a typical weekend. If it was the weekdays, I think personally it should have probably been about, I don't know, say 6 p.m. Pacific. That gives an hour after most of the average jobs are done.
But at the same time, it was probably one of the fairer systems that I've seen. So I can't give them too much grief over when it happened. And obviously, if you had a friend who was able to camp tickets for you, such as I was, it was not a painful process to fill out, and it was not glitchy or overly laggy or any of that. So,
and it wasn't like they didn't announce the days and times in advance.
Yeah. So moving on, I think we both know the biggest thing that's been happening over the past week and the biggest thing that we need to talk about right now.
Oh my god, the forums exploded on the weekend.
I have not actually watched the forums as closely, but I've seen people exploding on Twitter, on Tumblr, on Facebook, literally everywhere. No one can stop talking about the unbelievable brokenness of hunts. We should be calling this Huntgate or something.
I wouldn't. No, I can't even call it a Huntgate. I would say it was more of a hurdle. But basically, the problem with the hunts is this.
To be fair, there are several problems.
Okay, let's start at the fundamental issue here. The fundamental issue was the B rank hunts were designed to be solo targets. The A rank hunts were designed to be a small to full party. And the S ranks, which are incredibly hard to trigger, were supposed to be for multiple parties. Now, the problem with this is you have entire server fulls of people looking for these things because, one, it's new content, and two, they made the rewards absolutely broken.
And let's talk for a little bit about how broken rewards are, because we touched on this briefly in the last episode, but as it stands right now, just as an example, it's going to run you about 1,000 allied seals to pick up a new piece of item level 70 armor. It's going to cost you about, I think, 60 seals to pick up a new piece of equivalent item level 90 armor. It's going to cost you about 250 to get oils or sands of time to upgrade soldiery equipment. While you're hunting these marks, you're also getting tomes of soldiery and tomes of mythology. People have done the math and figured out that this is literally, if you are a fresh 50 without even the questline artifact gear, just running hunts will quickly catapult you into eye level 90 something to 100.
And it's rather ridiculous because, as an example, a B rank hunt on average will net you about 5 allied seals, 30 mythology, and 20 soldiery. And it's about a 4-minute fight.
Go ahead and just do some back of the envelope math there. I've seen people saying, you know, I was in a hunt party for an hour and I've already capped out soldiery for the week. I've seen people saying by being in spamming hunt parties, I'm spending mythology on classes I don't even play just to avoid going over the limit.
There was already talk of people finishing an entire soldiery upgrade set over the weekend. That's what, yeah. 5 days after it went live, and there's already people fully equipped in I-110 gear from this?
And there's also the simple, you know, you can say, okay, well, these are the people who are super, super dedicated to it, you know. The problem is that, again, let's say you want to take this a little more casually. You don't really have that option because, as Nell just explained, you have an entire server competing over these handful of marks. So either you are part of the huge mass that is spamming to get every single markdown, or you are lucky if you can get a couple shots in and be counted as a contributor at all.
Because, honestly, unless you're in a full party now, you're not going to get any kind of contribute bonus. I have heard of people go in and they have literally zerged every ability that they had, every cooldown that they had, and walked away with 2 seals. That's it. Because they weren't in a party. And that's ridiculous. Like, if you... They increased the HP over the weekend. But they said that they increased the ability to get credit, but they didn't. And it's very noticeable that they didn't.
Not to mention that, you know, that also breaks the whole idea of, you know, okay, this is designed for a solo character. This is designed for a small party. They outright said, yeah, we increased the HP far beyond where you could solo this at all. Thrown that out completely. And that's not even getting into the rampant, constant cheating.
Okay. It started off as rumors that there was people using third-party programs to basically bring up their minimap and use this radar program to view where monsters were and what the names of those monsters were. This could see through walls, elevations, etc., etc. That already sounds broken enough as it is, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's pretty broken. And people have pointed out that that's, you know, oh, well, it's the same as wide scan from Final Fantasy XI, except this is a game where you don't have wide scan. It's not an ability in the game, but that's just the beginning.
Oh, yes, it gets much worse. On top of this, there's multiple link shells out there using multiple people on multiple accounts doing this, so they can literally view an entire zone, and then as soon as they find the mob, they're using place hackers to teleport themselves to the mob instantaneously.
In other words, oh, and let's also note, if you are in a link shell with someone doing this, whether you know it or not, you are flagged as suspicious behavior. So you have to be, if you do decide, okay, this is ridiculously broken, but I guess this is the only option available to me, I'd better look for a hunt link shell, you'd better be very careful to make sure that the shell that you're in is not abusing these tools, because you can get caught in the crossfire as well.
And if you get caught in the crossfire and banned for this, you're going to have a heck of a time trying to prove to Square that you weren't cheating. Because, let's face it, do you remember Final Fantasy XI's LM17?
Mm-hmm.
The big Christmas crush?
Yep.
For those of you who are new to 14 and never heard of this from 11, the LM17 event was Square basically warned people in advance, don't cheat at XYZ, or in this case, this was Salvage, an event that they had in 11. And people ignored it, thinking, oh, well, Square's not going to do anything because I'm not getting caught. I'm not having any problems. I'm not cheating, per se, because Square's not doing anything about it. Square looked at the records for an entire year. An entire year. And literally banned thousands of accounts over this.
And it's, you know, it's one of the, I mean, it is a reality. Most of the people who are cheating are going to get caught. But the result is that you have no way of knowing, if you are playing legitimately, whether or not the people that you're playing with are also playing legitimately, unless, for instance, you see them teleporting away from you in the middle of a conversation.
I can understand if there's a bunch of dedicated players out there actually searching of their own accord and doing the research and such that way. For those players, I applaud you. Good work. Keep up the good hunt. For those of you who are using this third-party program and others like it, I really have to say, I don't know, that's a real shame that you feel that you need to cheat in order to play a game.
But at the same time, this is also something that's on Square's head because they have created a really, really degenerate state of affairs. At the moment, right now, despite, the pre-release thing saying, oh no, don't worry, this isn't going to be like Notorious Monster Camping in Final Fantasy XI. And again, as a primer for those of you who are not familiar with Final Fantasy XI, Notorious Monster Camping was basically find a place, sit there, and in many cases compete with bots to try and get claim on a target. But at the moment, this is really Notorious Monster Camping 2.0 with far better and faster rewards than you can get doing anything else in the game right now.
It's rather ridiculous, and there's been lots of suggestions. I'm going to throw out a very, very quick one based off of a couple that I've read and some of my own thoughts. That if it's implemented, I think would be great. If it's not, well, the hunters that are cheating or burning through it will be done soon enough, and then it'll allow people that actually want to do it legitimately and those that are doing it legitimately to finish or actually progress. One, I think that the dailies should be definitely buffed. There is no reason for a grand total of 7 allied marks a day from your dailies, not counting your B rank hunt sheet, because that B rank hunt sheet counts as 20, and you know that there's going to be people scouring the freaking face of Corthers for Null again.
Which is the second week in the row that Null has been the target, so that's, a nice extra kick in the pants.
Oh, hell no. But, okay, so dailies should be buffed. I would think to at least 5 seals per instead of 1, so you can get a total of 35 seals a day. And you think about it, that's not that bad. It's not overly too much when you're going for some of the gear. Second, the I-70 gear should be exceptionally lowered, and the I-90 gear raised in price. The oils and sands of times, like the books you need to get them, should have a cap per week of how many of those you can get, and they should not be dropping off the boss monsters.
Are those your suggestions, or do you have anything else you want to add there?
That the A's and the S ranks should be, you only get the hunt marks from them once, and the B ranks you get the full value once and then half after that.
I would say at this point, what needs to happen, I agree with you about the pricing, definitely. I think the pricing should be about half what it currently is for the 70 gear, and probably 10 times at least what it is for the 90 gear, if not more. I also agree with the idea, rather than having a cap, I would say cooldown once per week. You can get 1 oil per week, you can get 1 sand per week, which is kind of about, if you think about it, in Circus Tower, for instance, you're getting 1 unidentified tombstone a week. It's a once a week thing. I think that's a legit, fair way to do things. Seals, dailies, definitely need to be buffed. I would also think it'd be a nice potential thing in there to put in some conversions. For instance, if you have a whole bunch of companies marks, you could convert some of that to allied marks, seeing as how, again, this is through the grand companies to begin with.
I mean, even a 10-to-1 ratio on that would be fine.
Yeah. I also think it would be really, at this point, the Notorious Monster side of things is really getting out of control. I think you need to have some more than just a hope it respawns as a mechanic. You need to have more than, okay, well, it's existing out in the open world, but everyone can get contribution credit. At this point, this is beyond just, okay, increase the HP and it counts. A better system might be basically to have sort of a mini fate for these, complete with map markers and complete with, differing rewards depending on how much damage you do.
What if the B ranks were, like, say you spent Grand Company seals, not allied, Grand Company seals, to get a hunting permit. And then you can go track the hunt, kind of like a treasure chest. You pop it, and then you kill it with whomever's there. You get the marks for it, and that one has a chance of dropping, like, say, an A rank.
Yeah, that would actually be a much more balanced system if basically the hunts worked more like the treasure chests do, where, again, there's a benefit for being there, even if you're not one of the people who has that is your primary target, but, you don't wind up with, again, huge zones huge groups just scouring the entire area, hoping desperately for something.
Yeah, because then you get the shuffling horde going from hunt to hunt. Seals.
Basically, at this point, this is the recreation of the horrible, horrible fate parties that would roam Querthus back at the game's launch, because people were like, oh, well, this is the fastest way to level. Yeah, but you're basically bypassing every bit of content that has mechanics. Sure, you're advancing your level, but you're not actually learning how to play your class. And at this point, you can go straight from trying to fate grind to trying to seal grind, again, without ever having to learn mechanics or anything. So you can be kitted out, but totally clueless as to what you need to do in any dungeon or any kind of group setting.
I think we've gone a little bit too far on the hunts now. We've been talking about it for at least 10 minutes.
Yeah, we've talked. So let's move on from our rant on that. That's kind of the mess of the week. But let's talk about some things that are happier to talk about. Nell, you've done some more of the dungeons now. I know last week.
I have finished. I finished all 3 dungeons. I would have to say Tamtara is my personal favorite story-wise. Hullbreaker is my favorite aesthetic-wise. And Stone Vigil is a pain in my rear.
Stone Vigil is kind of a mess. Personally, I don't dislike Stone Vigil. I just also
don't get me wrong. Stone Vigil is fun, but it's a pain in the ass.
I think the second boss fight, to me, is the worst part of the entire dungeon.
I can see it, and I don't want to spoil it, because people will get there and find out for themselves. If we start talking a little bit more in depth about dungeons, I'll do that next week, so that way it'll have been at least 2 weeks since patch. Mm-hmm. But I think the surprise mechanic on the third boss was actually kind of fun, though.
I think the third boss was different, but I don't know if any of the mechanics that I saw in that particular fight or in any of the Stone Vigil fights are things that I really want to see again. I think in some ways it feels like they were really reaching for new mechanics and they didn't quite hit the mark compared to, honestly, I would be happy to fight any of the Hullbreaker or Tamtara bosses again, because they were very clever fights and very put together. Especially
Hullbreaker. The
last boss in Hullbreaker is one of the most nifty 4-person encounters that they've found in the game so far.
I would agree with that, because that boss fight at the end is amazingly well coordinated and amazingly executed.
And it's not actually all that hard, but it requires, it's easy to wipe the first couple of times when you're not sure exactly what you're supposed to be doing.
But it's also very easy to pick up after you see, because it's not hiding mechanics from you. It's actually, mechanics are very noticeable. Even if you don't react to them the first 2 times or so, your party will pick it up very quickly, even though it is a little bit more advanced than the previous dungeons.
And it is very much a, case of, I remember the first time I was in there, the first poll, we wiped, and then everyone was like, oh, okay, now that I've seen this, I totally get what we need to do here. And
that's a good thing.
Yes. So Hullbreaker, a lot of fun. Hullbreaker and Tamtara, I think, are winners over Stone Vigil. I think it's not so much that Stone Vigil is bad as it's up against a couple of really, really good dungeons.
Yeah, never going to say that the Stone Vigil hard mode was a bad dungeon. It was an interesting dungeon, But when you compare it against the awesomeness that was Hullbreaker and the sheer incredible storyline that was Tom Tara, it's kind of like the weak link in between the three dungeons.
It would have compared nicely with the first batch that we got with Pharos, Copperbell, and I can't remember the other one right now for some reason. I know this one.
Come on, you can get it.
I know. Oh, right. Hawk. That was it.
Thank you.
I don't know why I couldn't remember that. Meanwhile, I finally got into Circus Tower.
Oh.
Elliot done that last week, but I only just finally got in there and ran it. And I will echo what everyone said. It is an absolutely gorgeous area. The music is perfect. The visuals are perfect. The bosses and the arenas are very well designed. The one thing that I feel like it's not as good at is the actual mechanics. I feel like in Labyrinth of the Ancients, there was a lot more interesting stuff going on during the trash pulls, during the boss fights. I feel like this was most of the boss strategies boiled down much more to, don't stand in the obvious doom and group up occasionally.
I can understand that, except for the second last boss. The second last boss has a lot of mechanics thrown into it. But at the same token, you have to remember that they changed the party setup for this raid. Rather than having 6 tanks, they dropped it down to 3 tanks. So there's not going to be as much tank coordination going on there, so it's a lot more damage heavy, and it's going to be a higher need for proper DPSing rather than proper tanking, or having shoehorn tank specific mechanics into a fight like tank swapping, which would be insanely difficult in a 24-man.
No, I don't mind. But I mean, I usually run the Crystal Tower instances as a healer. I know, I'm often thought of as a tank, but I do tend to run those as a healer, and I found, generally speaking, compared to the fights that you got there, I will say the second to last boss and the last boss really step up the complexity a fair bit. The second boss, though, I found the second boss was probably my favorite in terms of just sheer fun, because there is a platform hopping section in there, which I found really engaging. I feel like it was mechanically a fair bit simpler than fighting, say, King Behemoth or Bone Dragon or whatever.
I can understand that, but that second boss, if your tanks aren't on their game, your party and the entire alliance is going to wipe because of one wrong misplacement.
Yeah, there's definitely some stuff in there that's going to throw people for a loop. So I would not say that Circus Tower is bad by any means. I just feel like it was a little bit simpler.
And I counter-argue with that, with saying that because of the change in the role, like in the party roles, that it had to be designed to be simpler.
No, maybe. I don't necessarily agree, but I don't think it's one of those. I think it's a fine point of contention rather than anything.
Either way, it is still a fun and beautiful place.
Yep, and you can get lots of unattractive gear from there. I've seen all of it, and still not fond of it, but that's what.
Hey, Amon's hat can ruin any cutscene.
Amon's hat is, sufficiently poofy to ruin any cutscene and any kind of dramatic tension that you want. That's very true. Trying to think of what else has been. Obviously, we've talked about the big community news. What else have you been up to this week, Nell?
I did the recording for Tom Tara, and I did the recording for Hullbreaker, so those should be going up soon. Aside from that, I've been more or less here and there working on trying to get up to Novus weapon. The Alexandrite grind is not as bad as it used to be, but it's still quite a bit of work. Aside from that, it's mostly getting ready for 2.4 with Ninja's release, as well as making sure I have all the ducks in order, so to speak, with both the channel and with all the other things that are going on in my real life. Because as many of you know, I actually am going to the Fan Fest, and I'm hoping to get a press pass so I can get at least a 15-minute interview with Yoshida-san or some of the community team, but no guarantees on that. If anybody from the community team is listening, please contact me on Twitter or something to let me know how I can get a press pass beyond just submitting an application. Please.
I will second that, since I will not be at FanFest, so I will not be able to, I will not be able to talk about anything other than in secondhand terms. So I want to know more too. I want to see more. That's probably going. I would be stunned if we were not hearing about the first expansion. I actually half expect that by that point 2.4 will be out and we will have Ninja to play around with on the live servers. But regardless, I think we're going to see a lot of new information once FanFest rolls around.
I do believe they did mention that there is most likely going to be expansion information released at the Fan Festival, and the Fan Festival will be coming out shortly after 2.4, I believe, at least with the timing, because it's about 3 months now from the Fan Fest, and the patch was released 2 weeks ago, so probably.
That's what they've said, probably, but, there's always the possibility of it shifting a month or so in any direction, so nothing's certain, but that's what appears to be on deck at this point.
Okay, the only other thing that I at least caught my eye from the Lodestone, I didn't see too much like on the Reddit. The Reddit was mostly exploding with hunts and the whole thing there, along with the Lodestone. But one topic did pop into my quote-unquote radar, for a little bit of discussion there, was somebody asked a very interesting question of why do people have a stigma against speedruns? And there was some very good discussion about it. I would have to say, I would echo the first couple of commenters on there, that it's not speedrunning itself that's the problem. It's the attitude that the speedrunners used to have to non-speedrunners that causes this stigma towards the whole concept of speedrunning.
I'm going to have to kind of agree with you that, there's a certain kind of behavior. I can't speak for you, but I think most everyone doesn't, if you want to speedrun, that's fine. If you have a party that says, we're going to go in and speedrun, that's totally fine. I've never had a problem with, people putting up, for instance, parties saying, we're doing an AK speedrun, anyone who wants to come in. The problem is if you don't like to speedrun for whatever reason, or if you would prefer not to, and having people kind of spring it on you as, well, why would you ever do anything else? Well, because some people either aren't geared enough for it or don't know how to do it. Some people prefer a more relaxed pace. Some people aren't skilled enough to do it. Some people just would rather have, a slightly longer run with more space for people to make jokes and kind of relax. There are a lot of reasons why you might not want to do a speed run. The problem is when it's treated like, well, why? That's not legitimate. Come on, you're doing a speed run now.
Yeah. So people that do want to speed run, more power to you. I have done some myself. There's nothing wrong with speedruns. It's the attitude that some people share either way. Because I will not say that it's solely the speedrunners that have the attitude. They were just, and I won't say all of them, but a good chunk of them were the primary cause of this conflict, so to speak. So if you're a speedrunner and you want to speedrun and you're going to like Duty Finder or something, take 2 seconds. Ask if people want to. If they don't want to, then make the choice of whether you want to drop out, wait 30 minutes and go back in, or if you want to go at a slightly slower pace. Because literally, all you're going to be saving is a couple minutes at most. And if you're in roulette, you're not there to speedrun, you're there to complete your duty.
And that's the big thing, is that if you're in roulette, you aren't the arbiter of how things are run.
I don't care if you're the tank or the healer.
Nope. Whether you're the tank, whether you're the healer, whether you're one of the DPS, I see it mostly in DPS, but you don't get to decide how the run goes. That's a collective group of strangers, and you don't know one person.
One person.
You have 3 people who don't really want to speedrun.
No, there's no one person that controls.
And one person who does.
No. All right, I think that's about all the time we have for this week, though.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a good idea. Obviously, as always, you can find us on YouTube. Like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. You can leave us feedback down in the comments below if you're watching this on YouTube. You can also send us comments via Twitter, or you can ask questions, leave comments, leave suggestions and feedback in the official Lodestone topic. We're also we read our comments wherever, so if you see this somewhere else, you can leave comments in the monologue, questions there, email us, whatever you like. However, YouTube comments and the Lodestone topic are the fastest way to get in touch with us.
Twitter is also fairly quick. Twitter is also fairly quick, but we don't always have it up in our face, so it's usually YouTube comments is the fastest way to reach us.
Agreed. So, if there's nothing else that Nell wants to add?
No, this is Nell Celestine
and Elliot Lefebvre
bidding you adieu.